Welcome to A Bit of Board Games, a casual podcast documenting the many failures and hopefully successes of Waffle Games, as we learn the ins and outs of board game design and self-publishing. Join us on this journey as we talk about a bit of life, a bit of design, and a bit of board games.
Welcome back to another episode of A Bit of Board Games. Did that in a different intonation than I normally do. I'm Steven, game designer and artist, and today is May 22nd, episode 57. And with me today is...
Ralph. Hello.
What do you do, Ralph?
Oh, I've been demoted. I'm a cashier. So when it comes time to buy the game, I will be the guy selling it to you. And it's only going to be physical location. You can't order anything.
Yeah.
We'll just
One location, sketchy parking garage.
Yeah.
Ralph's
I was going to say me in my backyard, but
I mean, if you want people to know where you live, that's fine too. But
sketchy parking garage, yeah.
Sketchy parking garage. He's just gonna camp out 3 days of sales, and that's the only time to get it. So
3 days of sales, very limited release.
Yeah, they're all handmade copies too. Cut them out ourselves and glued everything together. It's gonna be great.
Yep. Right.
Anyway, I'm kind of I'm sick again, so I've got a little bit of a cold. I don't know if you can tell my voice.
Can't catch a break.
No, seriously. It's like we're just getting sick like constantly, and it's so annoying. I guess that's what.
Has it hit anyone else in your family? I know you were saying like you were the only one. You got singled out
for that one. No, this one we've all got it, which kind of sucks because then Henry has like a cough and like chest congestion stuff. Libby's got a cough too, and then we're just like trying not to cough all night. It's so annoying. So far Cece hasn't picked it up yet, but man, kids just bring germs in and they just like get everyone sick, and it's tiring. But anyway, hopefully this cough will be gone soon. Although it didn't help today. Did you hear about like the forest fires in Canada?
Yeah.
So a lot of that smoke has blown down to Colorado.
Oh, right.
So it's like, it is the air quality. It's so smoky out. Like like normally, on a main drive, we got this great view of like Pikes Peak and these other mountains right like from town. We can just see it everywhere. But, like I couldn't see the mountains today because it was
like smog.
Because it was just straight smoke. Like,
well, yeah, but it looks like
yeah, but like it was like the visibility was terrible from it, and then it just like there sucks too. So like the kids didn't play outside today, and it sucks. We get fires out here semi frequently too, and like it's so interesting when the smoke just like blows in from somewhere else, or like sometimes it even like smells like straight campfire outside from that smoke. It's such a weird thing.
That'll be eerie.
Yeah. But anyway, in general, we're doing all right. Just sick.
Again. Yeah, sorry to hear about that. That is not fun.
So fun. Yeah, but no, we'll be all right. But I still haven't gotten too much done game wise at the moment. I like worked on the rule book a little bit. But we're just I feel like we just kind of lost. We had a lot of momentum going, and then we just kind of lost it a little bit, which like we'll get back there and we'll go through phases. We talked about that last week some too, but yeah, I am excited to keep working on it. And like while I wasn't straight working on this game, I was kind of brainstorming ideas for future games, which is so fun. I love kind of doing the game design stuff for that kind of thing. But and then what we were talking about last week with like achievement kind of things and like completionist, like when do you feel like you're done with a game? Like that kind of got me thinking about other aspects of games and stuff too. So it just goes through phases like that, which is fun. But
yeah, I think and this was brought up at some point, but like it's good. It's getting excited about the next game is very it's easy to do.
Yeah.
You get excited, but then I think what you had said, it was an earlier podcast, like last week or the week before, where you were like, the important thing though is to stick with it and still just finish this one, because that's the commitment that was made, and that was the whole purpose, wanting to learn the ropes with this first game. And I think but it's fine to get excited about new ideas, and if inspiration hits you, hey, you can jot stuff down, and that can be still useful.
I'm a strong proponent for is that the right word? I'm a strong believer. Advocate. I'm a strong believer in like having multiple projects going, like at different stages. Not like to be like have one that's like the focus, but being able to work on other things, kind of, if it gives you like take a step back from what you're currently working on, so when you come back to it, you feel a little more fresh and can come back to it with kind of different perspective. And who knows what kind of brainstorming, like if I'm working on some like random ideas that I get inspired about for a future game, that could trigger something or spark something that could like help the current game, like to help solve a problem that we might be having. So yeah, I think it's great to just explore those different ideas too, but with that caveat of wanting to finalize a project and finish it and stuff. So yeah. So Ralph, you had something you wanted to talk about. Do you want to?
Yeah, this was a random thought I had today, and it was actually sparked by thinking about a game. There you go.
That's it.
I was thinking about Signalis, as I often do. I often just stare off into the distance and think about how much I love that game. But basically, it also got me thinking about our game, because you've got a very small team. I think primarily 2 people worked on Signalis. I mean, they had help and they hired out like for music or whatever later for like some post-production stuff. But largely it was a very small team, very small effort, or great effort from a small team. And it just got me thinking, like, okay, so you and Trevor have spent all this time and stuff developing the game and the rules of the game and testing the game and like trying to work out all the kinks and figuring out where the ping points are and things like that. And then in a similar way, you have the idea, like, let's say you could talk about like Signalis. I was thinking you would have the idea, you would have the story, you would have to construct the mechanics of the game and do like the programming or whatever. But then after all of that, after all of that work, you still have like the artwork, like the direction, like the visual aesthetic, because Signalis has a very strong visual aesthetic. It really pops. Yeah. And it's very distinct. I mean, it emulates like early 3D graphics, like from the PlayStation 1 era, but it's very like I can look at a screenshot for 1 second and know immediately, okay, I'm looking at Signalis, because it's just so visually memorable. So that it just got me thinking, like, what is the more difficult stage to be in? What's the harder one? Because you kind of have a foot in both camps. But so I was just curious.
Well, I'll start by saying the easiest stage is the initial design, and like is probably the most fun stage, because you're like, you have this idea and then you're building out that idea conceptually. And so like you're designing, at least for me, it's the most fun. So you like have this idea, or you have like these mechanics, and you're designing out this game around those different things. So like you're either, if you focus on the lore of the game, you're then trying to figure out what kind of mechanics work with that, or what kind of game it is, and then kind of thinking through a lot of the concepting and like how everything works together. That's my favorite part. In terms of the two of like the development and testing and tweaking and all that, and the art, we haven't finished the art side of things yet, so I can't fully speak to that, but I'd say they're pretty similar, because essentially it's a grind for both. The development and testing, we get ideas and we get a prototype, and then we try it out, and then we find all the issues, and so it's fun to play, and then hopefully the game is actually like fun, and so that you're like, oh hey, there's something solid here, how do we fix these issues that came up? So that part, it's a process, because then we like make tweaks, make changes, like adjust stats, adjust numbers on cards, and then try it again, and like it's kind of fun to do that, to like play test it, but like getting in the weeds to actually work through all those issues, like sometimes it's like a fun challenge, but at certain points when it's like 70 different blueprints that you're then tweaking to try to balance, but even then, like, you don't want them completely balanced. You want the balance to be in the combination of cards. Like, I don't want it to be so balanced that like every card just feels the same, because then it's pointless. So
Ooh, that's a interesting topic that oh my gosh, that opens up a whole topic in my head. I've thought about this before. One thing that drives me nuts that developers do, because of the way that games are created now, everything is tweakable with a download. Like a game was released, and then if developers think that there's a problem or something, they'll release a patch.
Things,
The dreaded GIMP or the dreaded nerf, like, so you've got an item that's super awesome and like really stand out in some way, and so what the developers will do is they'll hear feedback from some moron who's crying about how it's overpowered, and this person like killed me with it, and so now I'm mad and I'm good. And so what do? They nerf the item into oblivion, and then it's just not even noteworthy anymore. You do that so many times, you're left with nothing that stand out at all. I feel like there's a better way to handle that. Like, why nerf it? Make it like harder to get, or something like that. Make it interesting, a more interesting journey to get there, but keep it rewarding. I mean, if it's the most insane, like overpowered thing in the world, like, okay, maybe you can tweak some numbers at that point. But that shouldn't be your first go-to. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but
it depends on the game too. I'm thinking like Overwatch. I used to play some of that, and there were certain like characters that I really enjoyed playing, and like they were a lot of fun, and I knew how they worked. And then I didn't play for like a long time, and I went back to it, and like I couldn't play that character anymore. Like they were just like garbage. So like I couldn't do anything. And so it's just like I understand, like, if there's one character that like is picked over all the others because like they're just like one-shotting people or something, something needs to be adjusted. Maybe the answer is not just like less damage or something, but like there's it's a hard thing to figure out, like the balance of a game. Like you don't want anyone to get some like crazy unfair advantage, because you want other people to feel like they still have a chance of winning. Like you still want it to be competitive. But like how do you manage that, with so many different items and different things, when you don't know what people are going to get? And like there's a couple like items of like Mastercraft blueprints that are like pretty insane. Like if you get it, like it could hurt people a lot. But then there's other cards that like remove those cards from the game. So like there's ways to like get rid of those if you have them, and there's ways to negate certain damage, but like if it hits, like it's gonna hit hard. And so like you want that kind of thing, especially because by then like the game is getting closer to an end, for Forged Trials at least is what I'm talking about. But anyway, sorry, back to the question between artwork and development. I think there's fun and grindy aspects to both. The art, I think, is fun to figure out, and then when you're drawing new items, it's kind of fun to imagine what that item is going to look like and draw that out. So like there's fun aspects to that, but then there's also the part where it can feel like a chore, because you're like, I have to just draw 60 items, and so it's not necessarily like, ooh, I get to draw this next cool item. Like that's part of it, but there's still an aspect to it where it's like at some point it's just creating, like content creating. You just have to what's the term I'm looking for? It's just like production. You're just doing it because it has to get done. But like I think there's elements of it that can still be fun. So
Yeah, I guess it becomes. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's kind of why I haven't gotten back to the artwork for a little bit, because I drew like 10 items and then we changed the style, and then I'm just like, okay, I need a little break from that first. So like I started working on the rule book then, and like, you know, there's an element of that that's kind of fun to see everything like come together in one organized way. And like writing a rule book's not like the thing I want to go do, but like it's something that needs to get done, and there's elements of it that like I know is just going to be beneficial. So
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, I mean, with the creative process, and this is probably true on both sides of it, a lot of this stuff tends to come together more towards the end, in bigger ways, more towards the end of the process. Like, things feel very disjointed and disorganized and slow and grindy towards the beginning because you don't have things figured out, and everything feels like a huge effort. But then once you get the system down, and I think that's one of the hardest things is getting that system down, getting the style down, and maybe even in some cases like a style guide, like this is how we treat. When it comes to artwork, it's like this is how we treat line work. This is our edge quality. This is how we color. You know, you adhere to these kinds of principles. And then once you have that, it takes a long time to get there, but once you have it ironed out, it starts to flow a little quicker. And
sure. Well, yeah, like once I had the old art style, I then like cranked out, you know, a bunch of items because like I knew roughly like aesthetically how they were supposed to look. And so like, and then I'm just like, oh, I know what to do. Excuse me. I just need to incorporate those same kind of elements in this new drawing, and like,
and it can become more formulaic at that point, which can help with speed, but it also can. You're right. It can also feel like more of a not as much inspired work as just kind of mindless. More grueling work. I don't want to call it that. I mean, it's more fun than just like taking out the garbage, but it's like it just becomes something you're doing, you know.
But then like it's kind of still fun to imagine how those like new items are going to look too, even in that same style. So like, I don't know, I kind of just enjoy like all the aspects of it. So
there's something to enjoy about every aspect. I would agree though that the very first, like the inspiration stage is totally the most fun stage, you know. Like we were talking about, Steven and I were on a call chatting about something earlier this week, I think, and we were talking about another prospect game that we're thinking about in the pipeline,
game number
whatever
3.
And it was just so easy to sit there and like, oh my gosh, it would be so cool if this happened, and really it starts to get your brain working, and it's a lot of fun.
I think I couldn't sleep that night. I think my brain was just like wouldn't shut off. And
Oh
like
wow.
I was just like laying in bed, I'm just like, stop thinking about it. But like it just like kept, my brain was just like, I don't know, just wheels were turning. But
I know the feeling you're talking about. I've totally felt that before about huge ideas. It's big ideas to do that.
And it's fun conceptualizing all that, but then it gets difficult figuring out the execution. So like, you know, the different elements of that I don't want to like say anything. The different elements of the party that you control like is one thing, but then it's like, how do the different types of people interact, and how do those stats work, and how do the, you know, the other like things that you're maintaining, how do those all affect each other, and how do you like keep up with all that? Like there's a lot of different pieces. That's a spoiler into game number 3.
You did a good job. No, you did a good job navigating that little minefield.
Look out for that game in 10 years from now. So
keep
your eyes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's a big puzzle. It's just like a big creative puzzle to do all that, which is fun. But
Well, it can be. I mean, the good news is for creative process. I've heard many counts of like people who have worked on big projects,
mm,
such as a board game or whatever else, and they will say, even if it's gone through like the what development hell. I mean, you've heard of
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Even if it's gone through this terrible just stage, um what people will say is, well, it did finally come together. And it's weird how a lot of those puzzle pieces came
sure,
together
yeah,
right in the like final hours. Like really it was just we were down to the wire, but then everything just would finally fall in place. You know, we
yeah,
reached the deadline, but in the most of the work, most of the finished product, we saw that get done in like the final 6 months of production or
yeah,
whatever. So I've heard that a lot, and it just does go to show that a lot of the hardest stuff is the setup,
mm,
but then putting those pieces in place it starts to get smoother towards the end. I mean, I'm hoping, anyways, right? So
yeah. It's like you said, it's getting that system, and then we can just
yeah,
crank it out. But so another thing I want to talk about, I heard this on another podcast that I was listening to. In relation to video games, they were talking about, I can't remember what game it was now, but they were talking about some element of game design and how you want you want your people to feel challenged by the game in a good way. You don't want it to be like too easy where you just like win at every time, and you don't want it to feel like you want to feel like you're accomplishing something, through that. So, and one of the key things that they said in there is that they you want it to be, you want people to have fun when they fail, like even when they fail. So it's essentially like you want like a rewarding challenge. So a challenge that like feels good to accomplish, but in that accomplishment, it feels good because it was difficult that you accomplished that. Not that you always want this, but so I guess like my question that I was trying to that I wanted to talk through was like how in board games, how do you make it fun to fail? Because like in video games, you can have respawns and different things that when you like die in a game and you like go and get your stuff that you dropped when you died, or like if it's like a fast-paced game, you die and you're just like reloaded back to the checkpoint and can keep going, keep trying something, whatever it is. There's certain elements of it that you want it to be fun when they don't succeed. But in a board game, that can sometimes feel worse if you're like going through this big scenario or this mission, and then you get close to the end and you just spent an hour and a half, 2 hours, an hour or whatever on this like one thing, and then like you die or everyone dies, and then you lose if it's like cooperative or whatever. And like it just kind of sucks because a lot of times, like sometimes you're like, oh, like we were so close, and like that's the feeling that is good. But when it's like, shoot, like we failed, like we have to start all over to do this again, it's like, oh, it involves like resetting up the board, resetting the different things. So how do we make it fun to fail in a board game? And I guess some of that depends on the type of game, like Forge Trials. Sorry, I'm just gonna keep talking for a second. I'm just rambling, but like Forge Trials, like only one person's gonna win, and I've had fun all the other times, even when I lost, because I still felt like I accomplished stuff and it was like close. That one being a competitive game is gonna be different. But how do we still make it fun for everyone? And then thinking through other future games that might have more story element or more of like adventure type things, and we want there to feel like there's a challenge there. Like how do we make it fun even when they fail, and how do we allow them to keep playing without just like any penalty, without just like going right back into where they were, but also without having to like completely scrap everything and start from the beginning necessarily.
right. Yeah, I thought that this was a interesting question because I mean, I can tell you what I think in regards to video games, but translating it to a board game is going to be the real trick.
Yeah, give some examples of like what you're thinking of in the video game side, and then we can kind of
Sure.
see how think through how we could incorporate that differently.
Yeah. So, well, one thing that immediately comes to mind, just right away when you say that, is roguelites. Because almost the entire idea behind roguelites is you basically fail more than you succeed in those. I mean, generally, you don't reach the end a whole lot unless you played the heck out of the game. But the way that they make it fun is, well, all of the variables, all of the things that could potentially change your one run could look vastly different from another run, just depending on what sorts of equipment you have or what items you get or what you encounter along the way or the layout of the rooms. I mean, there's a random aspect of encounters as well most of the time. Another thing a lot of newer roguelites will incorporate is still progression even after failure. So if you've achieved a certain point, even if you die, you still keep some stuff. Like it depends on the game, but it could be your money, it could be your the weapons you got. Sometimes you get to keep those. But but yeah, that's one thing that came to mind. So keeping it rewarding through just like an exciting new run. Literally, the game is just so fun, and you never know what you're going to get. That the mystery of what's possible, what you could potentially run into, kind of keeps you going, and it's usually a pretty quick reset and all that stuff.
So with that, how do you? That brings back to another issue we talked about last time with board games, is that people don't necessarily play like over and over again or play multiple times. So I'm trying to think, like, maybe there are ways that with that kind of idea or system, like either the runs or whatever you're doing has to be quick enough or short enough that as you all go through, like, you can keep trying over and over again, but like maintaining stuff that you have. There's something to that potentially. Or with like the random aspect, it's hard because you don't want too much randomness in board games, because then it feels like it's like the luck of the die. If you roll poorly or you roll like a die to or something, and then like you just get bad rolls, like it's just not fun when you fail. So like there's a lot of things where it needs to be a combo of some kind of strategy mixed with elements of randomness, or like ways to modify randomness.
Sure. I mean, I think one way would be to keep the luck aspect, the like randomness aspect, to keep that tied to possibilities that don't make or break your success rate.
Yeah.
Like, so maybe you have a random chance for this item or this other item, but with either of those items, you could still succeed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just had an idea. Yeah, sorry. You finish your thought.
No.
And then...
Oh, well. The other thing I was going to say was actually tying into last week. I'm glad you brought up last week's discussion about when you get your, what marks completion for a game, all that stuff that we got into. Go listen to it. I won't rehash the whole thing, but basically, one thing that I was thinking was, look, perhaps, I think the most successful games out there are the ones that you want to replay. Really, that's just open and shut. Perhaps we were overcomplicating some aspects. I think we were hitting the nail on the head for a certain type of audience, like that are similar to us, who are like completionists, really like that element of it. But I think just broad strokes, replayability is really one of the key things you should shoot for. Sure. I mean, all the top games pretty much have that in common. When you're talking about board games or something like that, they're all super replayable. Yeah. And you could just keep on. It's like you said with the Sushi Go game. You're like, I could play that a million times, and it's just like fun. So I mean, that's just something that I thought of randomly.
Sure.
But
Okay, so in the roguelite thing, this actually made me think of pieces from our second game that we're working on.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, where it's not necessarily like, so roguelite is like one long run through this whatever thing you're going through, this random map with different things that you're trying to get to an end and defeat a boss or whatever it is you're trying to do. And then you fail and you go back to the beginning with whatever loot you gathered potentially, or like certain loot that you gathered, or whatever it is. This game that we're working on, I just realized a little bit falls into that, where but it's not like you're essentially building up your character. So like you have your character and you start with like pretty basic gear. And then as you're progressing, you complete different, we'll just say, encounters of various kinds that you have to uh, go through. Some of them might require some elements of luck, but based on your abilities and your skills, you could increase your odds there, or based on the gear you get. And other ones might be more focused on um, like combat and how much like damage you can do and damage you can take. And so, but with that, like you'll do multiple encounter of these different encounters in this beginning phase. That's like an easier phase, and whenever you complete those, you get rewards. But the quicker you complete them, or in like the fewer amount of turns you complete them, the more rewards you get, and like the better gear you can get.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you progress, these earlier encounters will get easier for you because you now have better gear. So you're progressing and now can like accomplish these more. But then something happens and gets to like a second, tier of difficulty. Whereas like now you're going through the second tier where like you still have everything you got from that first round, first tier. And then like now you're going through tier 2, and again, different types of encounters, different types of things that you're doing where you get better gear and everything too. So it's kind of like that already, where it's like if you fail, like maybe you don't get rewards, you get fewer rewards, like scraps from whatever it is. And so there's like elements of like you could fail, but then like you try again, or you do a different encounter next time, and like maybe you team up with someone else to help you complete this encounter. And there's different ways to modulate that, but I just realized like that is one way to kind of do that, where it's all in one game, where like you can have success and failure throughout, and not feel like, and like the results excuse me, jeez, the results will be different throughout the game, and like every time you play.
It sounds very rogue like, that that sounds like that kind of system for sure. I like that. I thought of this. I don't know if this would be possible. Listen, everyone, I'm not a game designer. I don't know about board games. I'm just I just handle like artwork or whatever. But an idea popped into my head, and I'm just gonna throw it out there and see what happens. I thought of like, let's say you're playing this game and you're trying to get through the first tier, okay? Mm-hmm. And so you're playing through it and you make a little bit of progress every time, and it gets more doable each time because you're still having some amount of success through each run. But then when you die, you go back and then you try again. But those earlier stages are easy. But then I wondered, like, maybe each tier could be tied. It doesn't matter what it's tied to, but each tier could be tied to, let's say, a certain enemy variety, or it's tied to a certain territory. And it got me thinking that as you progress through the tiers, you could swap out like the board you're playing on. So you start on one board and it has a certain progression, and maybe it's some variety in how you go through and complete it. But then when you finish that one, your next tier is that second board, and you've gotten there. And then that one has a different progression and way that you can handle that. Interesting. It just could be, I don't know, I could see a world where that could be an interesting mechanic. But I just wanted to throw that out there again. If it's a garbage idea, please
No,
don't.
there's something there that's super interesting. Um, I'm gonna make a note of this real quick.
Okay, all right. Hey, if he's making a note, I feel good. I feel like I didn't say
All right,
something.
say all of that again, word for
absolute-
word.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, let me do that. Actually, while you're writing that down, I was going to mention another thing for replayability where it makes failure not feel just so bad, just like just a solely bad experience. And I think a good, we talk about it in like every episode, but a good place to go for that would be perhaps Souls games, right? Like Dark Souls, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And this one is interesting, and I'm not sure how it would translate to board games. But really, and also really gonna throw this one out there, but this answer could be different depending on who you are
Mm.
and why you play the Souls games. I mean, um, some people literally play them to just beat bosses and get like bragging rights, and they like the punishment or whatever. But for me, the reason it stays not feeling just like crap and soul crushing, and what keeps me at it is that I feel like when I fail in those games, I failed. The game didn't just throw some bull crap at me
Mm.
that is impossible. It didn't. There's just not like a BS factor
You just don't
as
know
much.
the method yet.
Yeah, I just need to learn. It's the mechanics. I'm in control. I can succeed with everything. I can succeed going in there with like a broken sword.
Mm.
If I'm good enough at the fight, I can do that. So it's up to me. It's down to my skill level, and I just need to. It's where the expression "get good" came from. I mean, like, oh, you're failing. Oh, just get good. I mean,
Right.
come on. Which is cringy and kind of overplayed by now, but
Yeah.
it has a through line of truth. It is true. Just unfortunately for you, you just have to get better, and then you can beat the boss. That's really all there is to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to translate that quite to a board game, but just like maybe just trying not to make things feel unfair. Like if someone's gonna fail, it shouldn't feel like they had no control over
Right.
that.
You don't want to fail on a bad dice roll. You don't want to fail on
Yeah.
like not drawing a right card or whatever. Like you need to like provide them every like opportunity, everything they need like to succeed, but in a way like where
Yeah.
they have to figure it out potentially. That's definitely like a different audience to like, because that you're talking about more like skill based games, which either comes with playing it more. So like that would be for a very particular audience, like hardcore
Yeah.
like gamers that are into that kind of thing with board games, because they want to learn and try that. Where like your general audience for a game night, like they might play your game once in a night, maybe twice, and like and that's like maybe once a week or less. And so you want it to be, you don't want them to feel like they have to play it 5-6 times to really figure it out. I think maybe there is some audience for those kind of like more brutal games. But I think it'd be a hard it'd be a hard sell, and you'd have to really kind of do it well in something that is just like intriguing enough and like to get people to want to try that. So
Yeah, it would be a risk because it wouldn't have the guaranteed like people would definitely like this. You
yeah.
could, if you didn't find your audience, which it's totally possible that games like this come out. They
Sure.
come out
Yeah.
and no one plays them. Even though if some people found them, it could be their favorite game they've ever played.
Sure.
But just no one found them ever.
Well, there are
no one
like
found
the Dark Souls board games and even Elden Ring board game that was on Kickstarter recently. So
Mhm.
like those, I mean, I haven't played them, but I'm pretty sure they're still like pretty difficult in certain things. So like, I mean, obviously there is an audience for that, but they had the audience like of the video game
They have
franchise
pre-existing
too.
audience, yeah.
Yeah, so that's different too, but definitely something to keep in mind. But
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. But
Did we finally do a concise
a
episode?
little bit. So we're not going crazy long this time. But
Literally last week we ended the episode and I said to Steven, I was like, wow, we finally got an episode under
it was like
like
the
30
longest
minutes.
one yet. No, this we're pushing 40, almost at 40.
It
so.
really does feel short though. I'm serious.
It's just because
like,
we're
I'm not
just
even
chatting about stuff. It's just fun, man.
Yeah.
It's a good time. But anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you want to keep up to date on what we're doing, keep listening to this podcast and or watching this podcast on YouTube. Waffle Games is our name on there. You can find us. You can also find a link to our Discord at bitwafflegames.com. Is that everything? Rate this podcast. Go and give thumbs ups on YouTube.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe, and send us money somewhere. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things we have to say, I think. So anyway.
Thank you to today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.